How did you ruin your entire life? Welcome back. Take a deep breath with me. Let the noise of your day begin to fade. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey. A journey into the quiet space between memory and regret. Into the heart of a question that keeps so many of us up at night. How did you ruin your entire life? You may not say it out loud, but maybe you've whispered it to yourself in the silence. When the weight of everything becomes too much to carry. This is the story of someone who asked that question over and over again, until the answer almost broke them. His name was Julian. Julian was the kind of person who tried to do everything right. He smiled at strangers. He got good grades. He helped his mother with groceries well into his 20s. He said yes more than he wanted to. He forgave people faster than they deserved. And he kept his dreams small, just to keep from failing. By 26, Julian had what many people would call a normal life. A desk job he didn't hate, but didn't love. A small apartment that was clean but quiet. Friends who messaged him every few weeks. And a heart that beat, but didn't burn. That he wasn't unhappy. He just wasn't anything. That's when it began. That whisper of dissatisfaction. That crack in the glass of his carefully built existence. It started with a memory. Julian was cleaning out an old drawer. Inside it, a photo. Him, age 14, grinning, holding a guitar with a wild look in his eye. Back when he swore he'd play on a stage one day. Back when the world still felt full of fire and foolish hope. And he remembered that boy, that passion, that dream. And then came the echo. What happened to you? At first, Julian ignored it, shoved the photo back, closed the drawer, told himself, I grew up. That's what happened. But the drawer kept opening, in his mind. At night, while walking home from work, while brushing his teeth, while sitting in a meeting that felt like it had lasted a decade. And then, one night, he whispered it. How did I ruin my life? Flashback, age 19. Julian had a chance. A real one. A scholarship to a music school. Not fame, not money, but a shot. He turned it down. Why? Because someone said, you'll never make a living off that. And he believed them. That he went into business. Safe, secure, predictable. Slowly, he watched the light go out in himself. In the present, Julian felt it. The ache of an unlived life. The haunting silence of a dream buried alive. He started waking up in the middle of the night, sweating, heart pounding, gripping the edge of the bed like he was falling off a cliff. He told himself he was tired, that he just needed a vacation. But deep down, he knew he wasn't tired. He was lost. Then came Olivia. She was a stranger at a bookstore. She saw him reading a music theory book, asked if he played. He laughed, said he used to. She smiled, then asked, what made you stop? Julian didn't have an answer. They talked. She was an artist. She had nothing figured out, but her eyes were alive. Julian started spending time with her. And for the first time in years, he felt like maybe he could still become something. But hope is a dangerous thing when you've trained yourself not to feel. Julian didn't quit his job, didn't play his guitar, didn't show Olivia the songs he used to write. He just watched from a distance. Her courage, her chaos, her light. Slowly, it made him feel smaller. He began to resent her for having what he gave up. Even though she'd done nothing wrong. One night, she invited him to a gallery showing. He said no. She looked at him and said, you're always standing outside your own life, Julian. Then she left and never came back. He tried to move on, went back to his routines, pretended it didn't matter. But now, even the numbness hurt. He stood in front of the mirror one night, his toothbrush in hand, and said it out loud. I ruined my entire life because I was afraid. The next part is slower. This isn't a story of grand redemption. No sudden epiphany. No cheering crowd. Just slow change. Julian started playing again. At night. Quietly. Shaking hands on the strings. He wrote a song. It wasn't good. He hated it. But he didn't stop. He played again. Wrote again. Started busking on weekends. Hiding behind sunglasses in fear. Made mistakes. Called Olivia once. She didn't answer. Auditioned for a local band. Didn't get in. But the ache started to soften. Time passed. He was 34 now. Older. Still working that job. But not hollow. He had a small YouTube channel where he shared music. Not famous. But real. One night, he went live. Told his story. Not for sympathy, but for closure. He ended the stream with, I ruined my life once. But I'm building something from the pieces. Now close your eyes. Let his story echo. Have you asked that question before? How did I ruin my life? Maybe you said no to something your heart screamed yes to. Maybe you stayed when you should have left, or left when you should have stayed. But here's the truth. Your life isn't ruined, it's paused. It's waiting. It's still yours. Like Julian, you can begin again. Even if it's messy, even if you're scared, even if you think it's too late. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say isn't, I made it. It's, I'm still trying. So let that be your lullaby tonight. Not perfection, not regret, just trying. And as you drift, may Julian's song hum quietly in the background, reminding you there's still music left in you. Even now, especially now, good night. Story 2, the beginning, and the drift. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I want you to let go of your distractions, slow your breathing, and sink into a story that isn't loud or fast, but still heavy in all the right places. This is a story about what happens when the life you're living quietly walks away from the life you were meant to have done. So, if you're ready, close your eyes and drift with me. It all started on a street where the trees whispered the names of the kids who used to play beneath them. That's what my childhood felt like. Something out of a photograph that had been left too long in the sun. Faded, but warm. I lived in a town where everyone knew your favorite pie flavor and whether you liked your coffee black or with too much sugar. My mother owned a little cafe right off Main Street. It wasn't famous, but it was loved. She had this laugh that made strangers sit a little longer in their chairs just to hear it again. Why Dad wasn't a man of many words, but he could fix anything. Cars, clocks, broken fences, even broken hearts. He'd hand you a wrench and say, let's figure it out. And somehow things felt less messy after that. I had a brother, Jacob. He was younger, louder, always asking questions about things I didn't have answers to. We shared a room until I was 17. He'd talk in his sleep about space and dragons and whatever weird thing he was into that week. But what I remember most was Sarah. She moved in 2 houses down the summer I turned 12. She wore overalls with grass stains and always had some new scrape on her knee. We became inseparable. The kind of friendship where silence didn't feel empty. She made me want to write poems even though I was terrible at them. I kept them all in a shoebox under my bed.by high school. We were a thing. Not the dramatic, handsy kind. We were more subtle, more real. We'd sneak out late just to lie on the trampoline in her backyard and look at stars. She always asked, what if we never leave this town? And I'd say, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. We had our fights, of course. Like when I forgot her birthday once, or the time I said something stupid in front of her friends. But there was always this understanding between us. Like no matter how far we drifted, we'd drift back. That I didn't know I'd be the one to let go first. After high school, I got a scholarship to a small college about an hour away. Sarah stayed back to help her mom, who was battling something the doctors kept misdiagnosing. I'd come home on weekends. We'd walk the river trail, share fries, fall asleep on her porch swing. I thought I had it figured out. College degree, come back, maybe open a small business, marry Sarah, buy a house near the woods. Simple, good, but life doesn't always care about your plans. Senior year, I landed an internship at a tech company in the city. I almost didn't go. I remember sitting in my car outside Sarah's house, holding the offer letter, staring at the glowing windows. She had no idea what I was thinking. I called her. She picked up on the first ring. What's up? I didn't even know what to say. I got something big. She came outside, barefoot, wearing my old hoodie. Tell me. I showed her the letter. She read it. Twice. Then looked up. You should go, she whispered. This is your shot. I didn't say anything. She kissed my cheek. Just come back, okay? I promised I would. I broke that promise. The city was loud in ways I wasn't used to. Sirens instead of cicadas. Horns instead of wind. I stayed in a tiny apartment that smelled like paint and ambition. Every wall was blank. Every corner echoing with the kind of loneliness I didn't know how to name. But the job? It was electric. Fast-paced. Full of people who said things like optimize and scale up. I started as an assistant, then a junior analyst, then a full team lead. They gave me bonuses, free lunches, a new laptop, and slowly, the town I came from started to feel like a memory I couldn't quite focus on. Sarah called every night. At first, I'd answer. We'd talk for hours. She'd tell me how her mom was doing, how the cafe needed new pipes, how Jacob was getting taller and asking about girls. But then the calls started coming during meetings, or when I was out with coworkers, or just too tired to talk. I told myself I'd call her back tomorrow, that I didn't. She'd leave voicemails. Sweet ones, sad ones, angry ones. You said you'd be here for Christmas. Why didn't you answer last night? Are you okay? I'm worried about you. I miss you. But I always had a reason, or an excuse, or silence. The last voicemail she left was only 7 seconds long. I hope you're happy. Then it ended, and I just stood in the hallway, phone in hand, staring at the wall. Time has a way of making everything feel urgent when it matters least, and making the most important things feel like they can wait until tomorrow. But tomorrow kept coming, and I kept saying, I'll call her back then. Weeks turned into months, then into something worse, a numbness I didn't even recognize as guilt at first. My life became wrapped in numbers, project briefs, networking events where we all smiled too much and drank overpriced cocktails pretending we weren't exhausted. I told myself I was becoming someone. I was moving forward. I was winning, but I was just floating farther and farther from the shore. Home started to feel like a faded dream. I could still smell my mother's cinnamon rolls, still hear Dad humming to old country songs in the garage. But those memories began to feel like they belonged to someone else. Someone simpler. Someone softer. I didn't go back for Christmas. I didn't go back when my brother graduated. I didn't go back when my mom called saying, I just want to see you, even for a weekend. And then one day, she stopped calling. I didn't notice at first. I was preparing a presentation, something about customer growth. But then it hit me in the middle of a Thursday. She hadn't called in weeks. I called her. No answer. I called again. And again, I left a message. Then another. My voice cracked. Then I called Sarah. She didn't pick up either. The next morning, my dad called. His voice was low, thicker than usual. She's gone, he said, just like that. Like 3 words could contain everything that I don't remember what I said. I don't remember if I cried. I think I just stood in my kitchen, staring at the fridge, wondering why I hadn't been there. Why I hadn't answered the phone. Why the last thing I said to my mom was, I'll call you Sunday. She passed on a Friday. The funeral was quiet. Small. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 days. My brother didn't look at me. Not once. Sarah was there, standing beneath a tree, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes red. I walked up, tried to say something. Anything. But I couldn't. She nodded once. It's good you came. That was all. Then she turned and walked away. After the funeral, I stayed a few extra days. The house felt too big, too silent. My dad sat at the kitchen table most nights, staring at her empty chair. He never said it, but I could feel it, the question in his eyes. Where were you? I offered to help fix the porch, repaint the garage. He just shook his head. Some things don't matter anymore. He whispered, why brother Jacob came by one night. He looked different, taller, stronger, and colder. You don't know what she went through, he said. She cried every night wondering if her firstborn forgot she existed. I didn't. I started. He shook his head. You did. He left before I could say more. I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters and trophies and reminders of a person I hadn't been in years. I found the shoebox under my bed, the one filled with terrible poems I wrote for Sarah. They still smelled faintly of her perfume. I wanted to call her, to tell her I was sorry, to say I missed her, that I still remembered her laugh in the rain, that I still carried her in every version of the future I once dreamed of. But I didn't call. I packed up my things and went back to the city. Work didn't feel the same. The bright office lights felt too sharp. The coffee too bitter. The voices around me too loud, too fake. One night, I stayed late finishing a report. Everyone else had gone. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes without typing a word. Then I opened my old voicemails. The last one from Sarah played again. That same 7-second silence. I hope you're happy. But I wasn't. Not even close. A year passed. My dad stopped picking up my calls. Sarah didn't respond to texts. Jacob sent a photo of their sold house. The cafe had been closed. Everything was gone. I started having dreams that in them, I was home again, sitting at the kitchen table, Mom humming while she cooked, Sarah walking in, laughing about something. I would reach out to touch her hand and wake up cold. I finally bought a ticket home. When I arrived, the town felt unfamiliar. The roads were the same, but everything had changed. My feet knew where to go, but my heart no longer felt welcome. The cafe was boarded up, weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. A rusty for sale sign flapping in the wind. I sat on the sidewalk across the street for hours. Cars passed. Nobody looked at me. like I was just another stranger, and maybe I was. I drove by Sarah's house that a little girl was playing in the front yard. Blonde curls, dandelions in her hands. She looked up and smiled at me. The same crooked smile I used to see in Sarah. Then the front door opened, and there she was, Sarah. Older, still beautiful, tired in a way only life can make you. She froze when she saw me. We stared for what felt like hours. Then she gave me a small wave. Not warm, not cold, just distant. She called the little girl inside and closed the door. And just like that, she was gone again. That night, I sat in my car for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stared at the dashboard, listening to the engine tick. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, scrolled through years of meaningless things. Office parties, plates of food, hotel lobbies, nothing real. Not one picture of my mom in the last year of her life. Not one photo of my brother's graduation. Not one of Sarah smiling at the river trail. All the moments I thought I'd have again were already gone. I went back to the city one final time. I quit my job goodbye party. No explanation. I packed a bag and moved into a small apartment near the edge of the same town I once called home. Not close enough to knock on familiar doors, but near enough to hear the echoes. Every morning, I walk by the old cafe. Sometimes I think I hear my mother's laugh. Sometimes I sit on the bench across from Sarah's new life and wonder what might have happened if I'd just answered one more phone call, made one more visit, stayed one more night. But those chances are over. Gone. I ruined my life not in one big decision, but in 1,000 quiet ones. The apartment I chose was small. 2 rooms. A view of the trees behind the post office. Quiet. I bought secondhand furniture, a coffee maker that made more steam than coffee, and a clock that ticked too loud in the silence. But for the first time in years, I didn't hate the quiet. I stopped pretending to be someone. Stopped performing. I started walking every morning, early, before the town woke. I'd take the long route past the cafe, now empty and hollow. I'd pass Sarah's neighborhood sometimes, not on purpose. Or maybe it was, she never saw me. Or if she did, she didn't say. I saw her at the store once. She was holding a bag of flour and a carton of eggs. Grace, that was her daughter, tugged on her sleeve asking for cookies. She looked up and saw me. I smiled. She didn't. She just nodded. We passed each other like strangers in a city we used to own together. That night, I wrote her a letter. I didn't write it to fix anything. I didn't expect her to write back. I just needed her to know that I told her about my mother. About the dreams. About the ache in my chest that hadn't left since the day I left town and never looked back. I told her I was sorry. Truly, endlessly sorry. I walked it to her mailbox just after midnight. The street was quiet. I stood there for too long, my hand on the cold metal, wondering if I had any right. But I left it. I walked away without looking back. She never responded, but I like to think she read it. Sometimes that's enough. Time moved again. Slower, but forward. I volunteered at the community library. Helped the old man on the corner fix his fence. Repainted the swing set in the park I used to play on. Not because it changed anything, but because it was something. Every Sunday, I visited my parents' graves. I'd bring flowers for Mom. Leave a wrench for Dad. I'd sit between them and talk. Tell them about my week. About the weather. About how quiet it gets when the past is louder than the present. And sometimes I'd say I was sorry. Not because I thought they were angry, but because I needed to say it out loud. And because no one else was left to hear it. One night, I was sitting on a bench outside the old schoolyard. The stars were out. The same one Sarah and I used to count from her trampoline. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what her voice sounded like when she was happy. I couldn't. But I remembered the way her hand felt in mine. And that memory held me like a blanket on a winter night. Then one day, something changed. I was walking past the market when I heard someone call out, "Excuse me?" I turned. Sarah. She looked tired, beautiful, worn in a way that said she had lived more than she planned to, and survived it all. "I got your letter," she said. I nodded. She stood there for a moment, holding a bag of groceries. Then she sat beside me on the low brick wall. "I read it 3 times, she said. "I didn't write it to fix anything," I said. "I just wanted you to know." She looked out at the sky. "I loved you, you know," she whispered. "I know," I said. "And I failed you." She didn't answer. Then, quietly, she said, "I waited a long time, but I had to move on." "I know." We sat there in silence. A long, aching silence. Then she said, Grace asks about you sometimes. I looked at her, confused. She saw the box of letters, she said. The poems. I kept them. I blinked. Hard. She asked who they were from. I told her he was someone I used to dream about. I didn't know what to say. She wants to meet you, Sarah added softly. That broke me. Not with tears, but with something deeper. Like something inside me finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. I'd like that. I whispered. Sarah nodded. Then stood. Don't be a stranger, she said, and she walked away. This time, I didn't watch her leave, because I knew I'd see her again. Grace and I met a week later. She was shy, curious, asked me if I knew how to make paper stars. I told her I didn't, but I'd learn. She laughed, the same laugh her mother had in the rain that we made paper stars for an hour. Then she asked, "Did you love my mom?" I smiled. More than anything. Why didn't you stay? I forgot what mattered, I said. She nodded like she understood something too big for her age. And maybe she did. I don't know what comes next, that I don't expect happy endings. Some things can't be undone. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Only remembered. But now, I remember every day. And maybe that's enough. Maybe remembering is its own kind of forgiveness. Maybe love doesn't disappear. Maybe it just waits in quieter corners of our lives, hoping we'll come back, even if only to say goodbye. So if you're still listening, if you're lying in bed, staring into the ceiling, wondering about your own regrets, ask yourself this. What if tomorrow you called them back? What if you showed up? What if you stopped choosing the wrong things before it's too late? Because, trust me, you don't ruin your life all at once. You ruin it quietly, with every ignored call, every birthday you miss, every "I'll do it later" that never comes. Until one day, you wake up in a life that doesn't feel like yours anymore, and all you have left are echoes and silence, and the long nights just like this one. Story title: The Day I Let Everything Slip Away. A man who once had everything, a deep love, a dream he was building, but made the wrong compromises. Tonight, I want to take you on a journey through quiet pain. Not the kind that shouts or breaks things, but the kind that lingers in your chest long after the world has stopped watching. If you're lying in bed right now, just breathe. Let your shoulders drop. Let your thoughts soften. And listen. This is the story of a man who didn't know how lucky he was until everything slipped through his hands. I grew up in a town where everything felt just a little too perfect. Streets lined with flower boxes. Front porches with rocking chairs that squeaked in rhythm with the wind. People said hello. People waved. My parents were teachers. Not wealthy, but full of love and homemade soup. My mom had a habit of humming while she graded papers. My dad would read old novels on the porch with the same pipe he never lit. I was a quiet kid. A good student. A better dreamer. And I loved music. I used to sit for hours in the attic with my guitar, letting the world fall away beneath the floorboards. Notes were easier than words. I didn't know it then, but I was building a language that would one day be the only way I knew how to say I was still alive. Then, there was Lily. She moved in the summer I turned 15. Her family bought the house next to ours, white picket fence and all. I noticed her the first morning, barefoot in the garden, tugging weeds with her hair tied up and headphones in. She didn't look at me. I looked at her for 3 straight weeks. Then one afternoon, she walked up to my porch, handed me a notebook, and said, "If you're going to write songs about me, at least let me read them." I didn't know whether to be embarrassed or in love. Turned out it was both. Lily had that wild kind of beauty that made you forget how to breathe. She wasn't loud, but she had presence. She painted her bedroom walls different colors every season. She read books in the tree behind her house. She once rescued a bird with a broken wing and nursed it back to flight. And she believed in me more than I believed in myself. The BY senior year, we were together. Quietly, gently, like the kind of love that doesn't need to be shouted from rooftops. I'd write songs. She'd paint. We'd sit under stars and talk about futures we hadn't built yet. She'd say, "You're gonna go far, you know that?" And I'd say, "Only if you come with me." She'd smile and say, "I'll pack tonight." But life doesn't wait for dreams. After graduation, I got into a music school in the city. Full scholarship. The kind of opportunity people begged for. We had one night before I left. We sat on the roof of her house, feet dangling, holding hands. "Don't forget this place," she whispered. "I won't," I said. Don't forget me. Never. But I did. Not all at once. Just enough. City life was a new rhythm. Fast. Demanding. Loud in a way that drowned out everything else that I practiced for hours. Took night gigs. Worked part-time teaching music theory just to keep my head above water. At first, Lily and I talked every night. Video calls. Long messages. Photos of sunsets. She even sent me care packages. Letters with tiny paintings tucked inside. Always scented faintly with lavender. But then came the band. A few guys in my program heard me play. Asked me to join. They had a small following. Gigs at local venues. They said I had the sound. It felt like stepping into something bigger than myself. Our first real show, the kind with lights and a crowd. I didn't call Lily that night. I told myself I'd tell her tomorrow. Then tomorrow became 3 days. Then a week. She called during practice. I ignored it. She messaged me late at night. You okay? I typed, yeah, just busy. Miss you. But I didn't hit send. I told myself she'd understand. That this was for us. That everything I was doing was still for that future we talked about. But something was shifting. The band got bigger. We started touring. Cities. Hotels. Photo shoots. I started wearing clothes that didn't feel like me. Saying things I didn't mean. I told myself I was becoming who I was meant to be. But I was just becoming someone she didn't recognize. One night, she showed up at one of our shows that I hadn't seen her in over 6 months. She was in the back, wearing the old denim jacket I loved. Her hair a little shorter. Her eyes different. Tired. I saw her before we went on stage. I ran up, heart racing, smile wide. She hugged me, but not tight. Not the way she used to. You didn't tell me you were playing here, she said. I didn't know until last minute. I lied. She nodded. We stood there in silence for a long time. Then she said, you're different. No, I said. I'm just tired. No, she repeated. You're different. I didn't know what to say. The show started. I walked on stage, played my set, and when it was over, she was gone. After that night, I didn't hear from Lily again for a long time. I kept telling myself she was just upset, that she needed space, that she'd come around. But weeks passed, then months. The silence stretched out like a fault line between us. Trembling every time I looked at my phone. I still had the messages I never answered. The photos she sent of her latest paintings. A video of her singing one of my songs. Out of key, laughing halfway through. I watched it more times than I'd ever admit. But I never called. And eventually, the messages stopped coming. The band took off faster than we ever imagined. We signed with a small label. Started recording full-time. My face showed up on posters, in playlists, in interviews. People recognized me in cafes. They said things like, you're gonna be big. And part of me believed them. But another part, the quiet part, was dying because I stopped writing the way I used to. The songs that used to come from that attic, from that roof, from Lily's eyes, they got replaced with things that sounded good but meant nothing. Producers wanted catchy, radio-friendly, marketable. They said love songs were risky. I stopped fighting them. And before long, I stopped fighting myself. I went home once. Just once. For Christmas, the house looked smaller. My parents older. My mom still hummed, but quieter. My dad still read, but slower. We sat around the fire and talked about the past like it was someone else's story. One asked about Lily. I walked past her house the next morning. Her garden was overgrown. The window I used to sneak pebbles that was shut tight. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, waiting for something I knew wouldn't come. Then I turned and walked away. Back in the city, things got louder. Tours. After parties. One night strangers who never asked what I missed. I smiled when people took pictures. Signed vinyls. Told interviewers that music came from real places. But I hadn't felt real in a long time. The guys in the band didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't care that we were making money. That was enough. Until the second album. I tried writing something different. Something honest. I wrote about her. About the night she left the venue. About the attic. About the roof. About how I never said goodbye. But the label hated it. They called it too sad. Too slow. Not sellable. They sent me rewrites. Ghostwriters. Hooks that rhymed but meant nothing. I stared at the pages they handed me and felt sick. But I recorded them anyway because I was tired and afraid. And I didn't know how to stop being who I had become. One night, after a show, I walked back to my hotel alone. It was raining. Soft and steady. I passed a street musician playing an old love song on the corner. His voice was cracked. His guitar chipped. But it stopped me in my tracks that he played with everything I had lost. That I dropped all the cash I had into his case and stood there, drenched, heart pounding. And I cried. Not loud. Just enough to feel real again. The next day, I told the label I needed time off. They pushed back. Said it was bad timing. Said we had press, a tour, obligations. That I didn't care. That I packed a bag and left the city without telling anyone. That I went back home. But it wasn't home anymore. My parents had sold the house and moved south. I rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town. Wooden floors. Fireplace. No Wi-Fi. I slept for 2 straight days. Then I picked up my old guitar, and I played until my fingers bled. Days turned into weeks. That I went on long walks. Sat by the lake. Read books I never had time for. The silence was loud. But it was honest. One afternoon, I drove past her house again. This time, it looked different. The garden was neat. The windows open. Wind chimes dancing softly. And then I saw her on the porch, holding a cup of tea. Reading. She looked up. And for a moment, just one, our eyes met. Neither of us moved. Then she stood, walked inside, and shut the door. That night, I sat by the fire with my guitar and wrote her a song. That I didn't try to make it perfect. I didn't try to make it rhyme. I just spoke. I still see you in every quiet thing. I still hear your laugh in places I haven't been in years. I forgot how to be good, but I never forgot you. I recorded it on my phone and sent it to the only number I had for her. No message. Just the song. That I didn't expect her to reply, but I couldn't carry the silence anymore. The next morning, I checked my phone. Nothing. That I went to the lake. Skipped stones. Watched ducks. Wondered what my life could have been if I'd just chosen differently. I remembered that first time she put her hand in mine, and how I let go. That evening, as the sun fell behind the pines, I heard footsteps on the gravel path. That I looked up. That it was her, Lily. She walked slowly, nervously, and stood in front of me. "Hi," she said. "Hi. You wrote me a song." "I did." She sat down beside me. "You used to write them all the time," she said. "I know," I whispered. I lost the words for a while. We sat in silence, the kind that meant everything. Then she said, "I listened to it 5 times. Did you hate it?" She shook her head. "No." I remembered. I didn't ask what, because I remembered too. Lily and I didn't talk much that first evening. She stayed until the fire burned down. I offered her tea, but she declined. Said she had to be home by dark. Before she left, she paused in the doorway. "You're not the same," she said. I looked at her. "I know." She hesitated. "But I don't think I am either." And then she was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat on the porch and watched the stars. The same ones we used to lie beneath. The ones we gave names to and swore would carry our wishes. I wondered how many times they'd heard me whisper her name when I thought she couldn't hear it. Over the next few weeks, I kept to myself. Sometimes I'd see her in town, at the farmer's market, at the post office, walking her dog along the trail. We'd nod, smile, nothing more, but something was building between the silences. Something soft. One afternoon, I found a small envelope on my porch, no name. Just a tiny painting of a lake, folded gently in half. Inside, a note. I remember too. And underneath it, in small handwriting, "If you're ready, I'd like to go walking again. Just once." We met that Sunday. Same trail as always. Same river bending between trees. The leaves whispered like they used to. She wore her old boots. I brought the same thermos I always did, now filled with lukewarm coffee. We didn't talk much at first. She pointed out a squirrel. I mentioned a song I'd written that morning. The small stuff. The soft edges. Then, when the quiet felt ready, I asked her, "Did you wait for me?" She stopped walking. "For a while," she said. "Longer than I should have. I'm sorry. I know. I should have." She held up a hand. "Don't," she said gently. "You left. You chased something. And I didn't stop you. I thought I needed to become someone. And did you?" I looked at the sky. "No. I just became someone else." She nodded. "Me too." And we kept walking. Later that night, we sat on the cabin porch, wrapped in old blankets. She asked to hear the song again. The one I sent her. I played it, hands shaking slightly on the strings. When I finished, she didn't clap, didn't say anything. She just leaned her head against my shoulder. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been able to say out loud yet, that I didn't come back to make things right, that I came back because I finally saw how wrong I'd been. Lily didn't move in. She didn't kiss me right away. Didn't say she loved me again. But she came over more often. She brought paint and canvases. I cleared a space for her in the corner room. She painted, I wrote. Sometimes we sat in silence for hours, just creating in the same room. It felt like we were building a home without walls. One morning, I made her breakfast. She laughed when I burned the eggs. "You're still terrible at this," she said. "I'm terrible at a lot of things," I replied. "But getting better," she said. I smiled. Eventually, I asked the question, softly, carefully. "Do you think we could ever be us again?" She didn't answer right away. She just reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "We already are, just a different version." The town started to feel like home again. People remembered me, not just for the music, but for who I was before all of it. I played small shows at the local bookstore, helped kids write songs, helped fix up the park where Lily and I first met. One afternoon, I was asked to play at a benefit concert for the town's arts program. I said yes. The night of the show, Lily stood in the back of the room, just like that night all those years ago, but this time, she stayed. And when I sang the song I wrote for her, I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at her. And for the first time in years, she looked back like she used to. After the show, we walked home in the dark. I reached for her hand. She took. No hesitation. No conditions. Just warmth. Just now. Some people think regret is a punishment, a weight you carry, but I've come to believe it's also a guide. A map to the places you turned away from. A quiet reminder of what matters. I'll never get back the years I lost. I'll never undo the silence, the goodbyes I didn't say, the versions of her I never got to meet. But I can love the version of her that stands beside me now. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If you're still awake, if you're lying in your bed wondering if it's too late, let me tell you this. You don't always get a second chance, but sometimes you get one moment. A crack in the silence. A letter on the porch. A look across a room that tells you everything you thought was lost might still be waiting. If you find that moment, don't waste it. Don't let it slip away like I did. Because the hardest part isn't losing everything. It's knowing you had it and you let it go. And that was the day I let everything slip away, and the long, slow road it took to try and find my way back. Story title: The porch light was still on. It had been 20 years since I'd driven down that winding gravel road. 20 years since the tires of my old rusted truck had crunched the same stones beneath them. 20 years since I had left everything that mattered, and everyone who ever cared, behind. And yet, as I turned the final corner and the hill dipped just enough to give me the first glimpse of the house, one thing hadn't changed. The porch light was still on. I didn't know if it was on for me. I didn't know if it had ever gone out. But it was there, flickering in the dusk like some kind of memory refusing to die quietly. The windows were foggy. The yard was unkempt, weeds climbing up where roses used to bloom. The white paint was peeling off the railing I had built with my father the year I turned 23. I put the truck in park and sat there, hands still on the steering wheel. I could hear my own breathing, and the sound of a wind chime still hanging under the eaves that I had left as a boy pretending to be a man. Now I was returning a man pretending he hadn't completely unraveled. I stepped out of the truck and walked toward the front door. I didn't expect anyone to answer when I knocked. Hell, I didn't even expect the house to still be here. But the porch light had been left on, and some part of me, the child that still lived inside this older, grayer shell, hoped it meant something. The door opened slowly. It was her, Claire, my daughter. She looked exactly like her mother, the one I couldn't face after. Everything fell apart, brown hair tied in a loose braid, eyes that didn't blink when they saw me. She didn't slam the door, didn't smile either. We just stared at each other, both suspended in some strange space between now and then. "I wasn't sure if you were still here," I said. She leaned against the frame. "And I wasn't sure if you were still alive." Her voice wasn't cruel. It was honest. "Fair." I nodded. "That makes two of us." She let me in, not because she forgave me. I could feel the weight in the silence between us. It wasn't forgiveness that opened that door. It was curiosity, maybe even a bit of shock. Inside, the house smelled the same. That mix of old wood, lavender cleaner, and something faintly burnt, like someone had tried too many times to bake something that never quite turned out right. The photographs were different now. My face was missing from the wall, but her mother's wasn't, nor were Claire's. She gestured to the worn couch. "Sit, if you want." Saturday she stayed standing, arms crossed. "You look older," I said, immediately regretting it. "I was 10 when you left." "What did you expect?" She was 30 now. My daughter. A woman I hadn't known since she was a child, who used to draw crayon pictures of us holding hands under blue skies. "I didn't come here to apologize." I blinked. Run away again. The words stung, but they were true. She stepped into the kitchen without waiting for an answer and came back with 2 mugs of tea. She placed one near me, but sat across the room. "You have 10 minutes. That's all I've got." I nodded, and then I began. "I left because I was scared," I said. "Scared I couldn't be the man you and your mom needed. I thought I'd just mess it all up worse if I stayed." She didn't react, that I kept going. I told myself I'd come back when I had things figured out, when I had something to show for all the years I was gone. But the longer I stayed away, the harder it became to return. Claire stared into her cup. "You left when Mom got sick," she said quietly. "You packed a bag while she was in bed. I watched you from the stairs." I closed my eyes. "I know. She asked about you, even in the hospital, even near the end." I looked at her. "She died thinking you might come back." My throat tightened. "Why didn't you call me?" Her eyes snapped up. "Because it wasn't my job to chase a ghost." The clock ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. That I remembered that clock. I bought it on our 5th anniversary. Claire used to call it the bird clock because the chimes sounded like a woodpecker. It still hung, worn and dusty, above the mantel. "I didn't expect to be let in," I said. "Then why did you come?" "Because I had to know if there was anything left of this, of you, of me." Claire stood. "I'm not 10 anymore," she said. "I know. You can't just walk in and expect." "I don't expect anything," I interrupted softly. "I just hoped." She walked over to a drawer and pulled something out. An envelope. She handed it to me. It was sealed. My name on the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in decades. "My wife's." "She wrote this the night you left," Claire said. "Said to give it to you if you ever came back." I stared at it for a long time. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short. "James, if you are reading this, it means some part of you still remembers us. I won't ask where you went or why. I won't ask you to explain what you couldn't even say. But I want you to know that I loved you, even when you didn't love yourself. Claire will need you someday, and I hope you'll be brave enough to return before it's too late. Don't come back for guilt. Come back for her. Love. Always, Lena." Tears blurred the words. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Claire watched me. She waited. Until the end. She waited. I nodded. My voice was barely a whisper. "I know." She walked back to the window and looked out into the night. "The porch light?" I said. "You always left it on." She shook her head. "I turned it back on this morning. Don't know why. Just felt like I should." That night, I slept on the couch. I didn't ask for a bed, didn't want to pretend like I belonged. But in the morning, she brought me coffee and a blanket. "Stay for a while," she said. "Just a while." And I did. Over the next few weeks, we spoke more. Not much, but more. She showed me pictures, told me stories I had missed, prom nights, college, the day she moved back into the house after her mother died, that I helped fix the back fence, repaired a leaky faucet, cleaned out the attic. Little things, things I should have, done long ago. One afternoon, Claire came home early from work, found me sitting on the back porch, holding a guitar I hadn't touched in years. "You still play?" "A bit." "Play something." I hesitated. Then I did. It wasn't perfect. My fingers stumbled. My voice cracked. But the song was about her, and she knew it. When I finished, she said nothing, but she sat beside me, and that was enough. Spring came slowly. The trees bloomed, one cautious petal at a time. And so did we. Rebuilding a bond takes time. Years sometimes. But I was willing. One night, as we washed dishes side by side, Claire said quietly, "I don't forgive you." I nodded. "I don't deserve it. But I see you trying." I looked at her. "And that matters." There are things I'll never get back. The bedtime stories I missed, the tears she cried without me, the sound of her mother's laughter fading into memory. But there are things I can still hold on to. The way she says good night now, even if it's quiet. The way we both pause, sometimes, in the middle of a sentence, and just look out the window together. And the porch light.it still flickers, but it's on. Not because she's waiting for someone to return, but because someone finally did. Title: The Pages She Left Behind. The pages she left behind, I didn't go looking for answers. Not really. I went home to clean out the house. To go through the closets, sweep the dust off the old photo albums, and sort through a life that didn't feel entirely like mine. My mother's life, she passed away quietly, in her sleep. No drama, no warning. Just one morning, the hospice nurse called and said, "She's gone." That's how it ended. 48 years of silence, half-truths, and memories I had been trying to forget, all wrapped in a single sentence. She's gone. The house was smaller than I remembered. When you're a child, everything looms taller, smells stronger, feels heavier. But now, at 34, I stood in the doorway and wondered how I ever thought the walls could hold so much. It smelled like dust, lavender, and something else, paper, stacks and stacks of it. My mother had always been a writer, not the published kind. Not the kind with awards or readings or polished hardcovers. She was a private writer. Spiral notebooks, loose pages, folded napkins with words scrawled across them. And she kept everything. Drawers full of her thoughts, cabinets filled with ideas, journals under the bed, in the freezer, in the kitchen junk drawer. Most of it didn't make sense. Half-written sentences, doodles in the margins, dates without explanation. But in the attic, beneath an old chest of winter blankets, I found the diary. Not labeled, not locked, just waiting. It was soft to the touch. The leather cover worn down, the spine frayed. I didn't know how long it had been there. I sat on the floor and opened it. The first page read, "If you're reading this, then you're braver than I ever was." It was her handwriting, no doubt about it, and beneath it, in smaller print, "To my daughter, who never truly knew me." I didn't breathe for a long time. I flipped the page and began to read. April 14th, 1989. I am 23 and terrified. I haven't told anyone, not even him. I keep touching my stomach like it's a secret I don't want to share. But it's real. She's real. I know it's a girl. I know it like I know my own name. I blinked. She was talking about me. May 3rd, 1989. I tried to tell him today, but he laughed, said I looked tired, and asked me to make coffee. I didn't have the courage to speak. I folded instead. I always fold. The handwriting was shaky, each page a little more frantic, like she was writing just to breathe. June 2nd, 1992. She's almost 3 now. She speaks in full sentences, follows me around with that wide-eyed look of wonder. But sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, and she deserves more than this. I closed the book and sat in silence. The wind outside rattled the windows that I had spent years thinking my mother was cold, distant, unreachable. But these pages, they whispered something else. She was scared. She was trapped, and she was trying. I read the entire journal that night. 10 years worth of entries. Some days were long, poetic, thoughtful. Others were single lines like, "I screamed into a pillow today." She smiled, and I forgot I hated myself. No one called me, not even once. I forgot her birthday. She forgave me anyway. She asked me if I was happy. I lied. I cried more than I thought I would, for the girl I had been, and for the woman I never got to know. The last entry was dated the week before she passed. I don't think I'll be here much longer. The pain is louder now, but I want her to find this. I want her to know that I was never perfect, not even close. But I tried. God, I tried. And I hope someday she'll forgive me. Maybe she already has. I closed the journal and held it to my chest. That I didn't have answers, but I had something better. That I had her words. The next morning, I opened the windows in the house, let the breeze in. I made tea in her chipped porcelain cup, sat on her favorite chair, listened to the wind rustle the curtains like it was reading the pages over my shoulder, and I whispered, "I forgive you." Not because she asked me to, but because I wanted to. That night, I slept in my childhood bed with the diary beside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a stranger in this house. Because finally, I understood. She hadn't just left behind old furniture and fading photographs. She had left behind herself I in the pages that I in the margins that I in me. Story name: The Last Time She Closed the Door, a quiet story of love fading, choices breaking, and the silence that followed. I always thought love would end loudly, shouting, tears, slammed doors, and broken plates. But when my marriage ended, it was silent, almost polite, the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl, the kind of quiet that screams louder than any argument. We'd been together for 15 years, married for 12, that had a daughter, bought a house, paid taxes, took trips, had fights. Nothing unusual. People said we were a solid couple. But I don't think anyone saw what happened after we turned the lights off, after our daughter went to bed, after the wine glasses were emptied and the small talk had run dry, that we became strangers. Slowly. I think it started when I got promoted. Funny how success feels like winning, until you realize what it cost. That I was working 12-hour days, emails after dinner, calls during bedtime, stories that she'd say, "It's okay, go take it." And I'd believe her that we stopped having dinner together that she'd eat with our daughter. I'd come home late and microwave leftovers. We started living parallel lives. Same house, different worlds. At first, I didn't notice, because we weren't fighting. But that's the thing, isn't it? When love dies, it doesn't always go out with a bang. Sometimes it slips out the back door, barefoot and unnoticed. One night, I came home and found her sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. Not the TV, not her phone, just staring. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. She blinked. "Hey." Her voice was flat. "Everything okay?" She nodded, but something in her eyes looked tired. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. We didn't sleep in the same bed anymore. She said my snoring kept her up. I believed that too. But really, she just didn't want to be close to me anymore. Our daughter, Emily, was 8. Bright-eyed, sensitive. She noticed things. One night she asked, "Why doesn't mommy kiss you goodbye?" I froze, laughed it off. "She's just in a hurry, sweetheart." But kids know. They always know. The real moment, the one I can't forget, came on a Sunday morning. Emily was at a sleepover. It was just the two of us. We were sitting on opposite ends of the kitchen table, eating toast. She looked up at me. I looked up at her. For once, no phone, no work, just us. And she said, "Do you even like me anymore?" I stared at her. The words hit like glass shattering inside me. I wanted to say, "Of course I do." I wanted to scream, cry, apologize. But I just said, "What do you mean?" And she answered, "I feel invisible when you're around." We didn't talk for the rest of the day. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because we were mad, because we didn't know what else to do. In the morning, she made coffee, poured 2 cups, no sugar. No small talk. She sat down, took a sip, and said, "I think we should end it before we hate each other." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded. Because deep down, I knew we were already halfway gone. The divorce was cleaned. Screaming. Legal wars. That we agreed on custody, split the house profits, signed papers like business partners. That I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town. She kept the dog. The first night I slept alone, I laid awake until 4 a.m. The silence was unbearable. I stared at the ceiling, remembering all the quiet moments I had ignored. All the times I chose a phone call over a conversation. An email over an embrace. That I remembered how she used to sit in the passenger seat and hum to songs. How she used to fall asleep with her hand on my chest. How she used to whisper, "I love you," even when she was mad. And how I let it all slip away, slowly, like water through fingers. People ask if I regret it. Yes. And know that I regret who I became. That I regret not seeing the signs. That I regret staying silent when she needed me to speak. But I don't regret the ending, because we were already gone long. Before the papers were signed, Emily visits me every other weekend. She brings books. She likes sleeping on the couch with the TV on low. She doesn't ask about the divorce anymore. But sometimes she says, "You seem happier now." And I say, I'm trying, because that's the truth that I'm trying. Last month, I saw my ex-wife at the grocery store. She was buying tulips, smiling. Someone was with her, a man I didn't recognize. She looked different, lighter. She didn't see me that I didn't say hello. And as I turned to leave, I remembered the last time she closed the door behind her. Not angrily, not with finality, just gently, like she knew it was the kindest thing to do. I still keep a photo of us on my nightstand, from the early days that were laughing but she's wearing a blue dress that I look young. Sometimes I stare at it and wonder if I had just paused more, listened more, held her when she was quiet instead of assuming she was fine, would it have ended differently? But life isn't built on maybes, it's built on moments, and I missed too many of them. So now I live with the silence. Not because I'm being punished, but because I earned it that I fill it with books, music, walks at sunset, long talks with Emily, and sometimes, just sometimes, I feel peace in the quiet. Not regret, not sadness, just a soft, quiet peace. The kind you only find when everything else is gone. Thank you for staying with me tonight, that if you're still awake. I hope this story gave your heart a little space to breathe. And if you're already drifting in sleep, may the echoes of Julian's journey carry you gently through the night. Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we wander far from who we meant to be. But no matter where you are in your life, it's never too late to begin again, that if this story touched you. Please consider subscribing for more stories like this. Stories about love, regret, healing, and hope. Until next time, sleep deeply, dream boldly, and remember, you're not alone. Good night.